On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks pick up a fourth consecutive victory and do so in impressive fashion, erasing a halftime deficit and really, truly dominating, honestly, in the second half against the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll get into this game and much more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1582 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Saturday evening into Sunday. And today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. And also, I want to encourage you, as always, on the top of the podcast, to make us your first listen each and every day. Check us out across the board on your podcast platform of choice, whether it be Apple or Spotify. We're also on YouTube on the video side. And I should plug as well a two-part episode that was a fantastic discussion with my friend Glenn Willis on Thursday into Friday. Still very relevant right now. Big picture stuff about the Hawks, observations from the early season, etc. And a great time to subscribe to this podcast. And with all that said, we'll dive in now to what became a very nice win for the Hawks on the road, 123-105 in New Orleans on this Saturday. Their fourth consecutive win. They start off a three-game road trip on a very high note and do so in really impressive fashion after halftime. In fact, they were down by 7 at the half, down as many as 10 in this game. Then they had a 24-6 run in the third quarter to break things open, and they actually won the second half of this game by a 70-45 margin against a good team. The Pelicans, when relatively healthy, are a good team, and they did all this stuff on the road. And very, very impressive stuff from this Hawks team. And we'll kind of zoom out a little bit here at the top of the podcast and just say like all kinds of takeaways, and really the offense is what led the way for the Hawks, both in the full game and especially in the second half. They ended up with a 129 offensive rating in this game, despite a pretty shaky first half across the board. And this is probably the most impressive part about this. The Hawks did not shoot the ball incredibly well. They shot the ball just fine, but nothing like that you would be blown away by. 48% from the floor, 14 of 41 from three. Again, acceptable, league average, or maybe even slightly better than that shooting. And at the free throw line, they were 19 of 24, just like nothing blew you away, but they were so good in all the other areas. So they had a 44% offensive rebound rate in this game. If you're not familiar with that, basically that means they grabbed that percentage of available offensive rebounds. That was the 99th percentile in that category. That led to 24 second chance points in this game. And as I'm prone to point out on this podcast, they won the possession battle, which basically means they had more opportunities to shoot than the opponent. They took 9 more shots than the Pelicans, and they also took 3 more free throws than the Pelicans, which means even if you shoot the same percentage, you're going to win. Even if you shoot a little bit less percentage than your opponent, you're going to win if you take that many more shots than your opponent. And that's not a small thing. So great work from a lot of different guys on the opposite glass in this game. In fact, every single guy who played at least 4 minutes for the Hawks had a offensive rebound, and everyone but Hunter had at least 2. So it wasn't like sometimes Capella just dominates in that category. He's great at that, but he had 2. Johnson had 2. Trae had 3. DeJounte had 2. Okongwu had 2. Bey had 4, and Bogdanovich had 3. It was a team effort. They were playing very aggressively and very, very well. And as I noted before, the second half of this game was kind of just a good example of the Hawks offense and how good it can be when it is rocking and rolling the way that it was. We'll talk about some of the adjustments later on in the podcast, but I thought Quinn Snyder did a very, very good job kind of tweaking things to approach this game after halftime, after, again, a pretty so-so first half on offense. But after halftime, the numbers were as follows. They scored 70 points, which is good in any context, but on 44 possessions. This is actually a very slow-paced game for a game that ended up with the Hawks having 123 points in this game. But again, just to do the math on that, 70 points on 44 possessions is the equivalent of a 159 offensive rating. That is absolutely ludicrous. Like league best is going to be like in the 117, 118 range. 159 for the Hawks after halftime. They shot 59% from the floor. They were 9 of 19 from 3, 13 of 15 at the line after halftime, 16 assists and 4 turnovers. Those are all incredibly good numbers, plus offensive rebounding. Plus they had 5 guys with at least 11 points in the second half alone. Trae Young, after some really not great shooting. I think Trae has played better than his shooting numbers indicate to this point in the season. But through the first 5.5 games of the year, he had not been making shots. In the second half of this game, he found his efficiency. Also had 16 points, 6 assists after halftime. He's very, very good. And he was not alone. He was, again, far from alone. I thought Trae was probably the number one catalyst after halftime. And look, big picture, this is the 5th straight game where the Hawks had at least 6 guys in double figures. The third time this season already in the first 6 games. The Hawks have had at least 7 guys in double figures. That's incredibly balanced and impressive. And by the way, the 8th guy, DeAndre Hunter, got injured in this game, came back in, was a real factor defensively despite only taking 3 shots from the field. He garnered real praise from Quinn Snyder after the game, talking about how he wanted folks that were covering the game to lead with Hunter, kind of talk about him on the front page. And I agree. I think Hunter played well. He was the only guy that didn't have big counting stats, but that just kind of points to how well the Hawks played in the second half of this contest. Defensively, they were not as good on defense as they were on offense in this game, but certainly a lot to point to in a positive direction. As they were scoring on every possession basically after halftime, they also held the Pelicans to 45 points on 44 possessions, which is just basically 1 point per possession. And that is great defense in the NBA. Ended up with a 110 defensive rating in the game. That is totally solid. It's not great, but it's not bad either. The Pelicans didn't shoot well from 3, which always helps, but that is not a good shooting team overall. New Orleans, that's probably their biggest weakness on offense. It's just a lack of spacing, especially with no Trey Murphy, no Jose Alvarado, who are both out for this game. So they did a good job kind of packing the paint for the most part against New Orleans, especially after the first half was concerned. New Orleans did have Brandon Ingram back in this game after he missed 3 games in a row, and he was fine, but they did actually contain Zion reasonably well for most of the game. They rebounded very well, of course, defensively and offensively in this game. And the Hawks didn't really force a lot of turnovers. That's kind of the only weakness that they had defensively in this game, but that was more than enough. So certainly an offense-first win in a lot of ways, where the offense was truly magnificent after halftime. But defensively, they also stiffened, and that also led to the offense being better after halftime. Like, once you're not taking the ball out of the net every time, it is very much easier to score. As anyone on any team or any coaching staff will tell you, it is easier to score when you get stops. And they're not totally independent entities. And I think defensively, them being better after halftime, holding the Pelicans to 45 points and doing a good job on the whole, helped to lead to the offensive success. So all that said, a very impressive performance. The Hawks were underdogs in this game. Our friends at FanDuel had the Hawks at +2 coming in. Not a huge spread by any means. These teams are pretty similar on paper, in my opinion, at least the opinions of most bookmakers. Basically, a +2 means these teams are pretty comparable, and then the Pelicans get 2 points for home court advantage. I have to at least say one more thing here before we dive into the actual meat of this game, and it's a bit of unfortunate news. And I want to touch on that a little bit early in the podcast so people don't miss it at the end of the show. But Kobe Bufkin suffered an injury in the last couple of days that's worth monitoring. Obviously, Bufkin is the first-round pick of the Hawks from last season. He's not played in rotation this year, which is not a huge surprise to anyone paying attention over the summer. But long story short, he and Mohamed Gay were sent to College Park to practice with the Skyhawks on Thursday when the Hawks had an off day. That's a very typical thing with the Hawks or another team to basically be doing with their G League team so close together. There's nothing weird about that. The Hawks do it all the time. But unfortunately, Bufkin got hurt in that practice on Thursday. He'll be out for a while. It's actually an injury to his left, which is actually also his shooting hand, his left shooting thumb. And after an x-ray, he has a fracture in that thumb. The Hawks said he'll officially be reevaluated in 2 weeks, by the way. I say this always with injury timelines, but if you're a new listener to the podcast, reevaluation does not mean return. So basically, the Hawks say their next update will be in 2 weeks, basically. Reevaluation at that point in time. So it'll be at least that long that he is out. And if you look at the sort of the history of this kind of injury on a shooting thumb, my educated guess is that it's going to be longer than that. Obviously, we don't know exactly when, but he did travel with the team to New Orleans. Presumably, he'll go to Oklahoma City and Mexico City on this trip with the Hawks. But unfortunate there. Obviously, again, not a huge impact to the team right now today, but Bufkin long term is a key piece of the roster. First-round pick, a guy I like a lot, and not great. They won't be able to kind of basically shoot for a while. He can stay in shape, obviously, since it's not a lower body injury. That's a positive in a lot of ways, but still not a great sign for Kobe early in the year, and kind of have a slight damper on things in between victories for the Hawks back to Thursday, and then back to Wednesday night, and then their win today. We found out that in the middle of that, but other than that, it was really a very positive day. So we'll dive in as we always do. If you're a new listener to the podcast, what we do on this podcast is lead with sort of the takeaways, the broad observations, and the notes from the contest. Then we sort of dive in to the more game flow, nuts and bolts kind of stuff, how the game unfolded, and kind of my observations in real time. And then at the end of the podcast, we'll talk about the player-by-player evaluations, breaking down all the guys who appeared in this contest. But before we get to all of that, a word from our sponsors on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. You should never have to worry when you're buying tickets to a big event. And with Gametime, you actually never have to worry. They have last-minute deals, tickets for football or basketball or baseball or concerts or comedy, theater, and more. It's incredibly easy to navigate Gametime app to find and buy tickets for any event in your area. They have zone deals as well. pick the section, and Gametime will actually pick the seats for you for an average of 18% savings. And at Gametime, you can see the view for all the seats in the venue that you're looking for. It helps you to know exactly what to expect when you arrive at that venue. They have all-in pricing at Gametime as well. You will know your total upfront without any of the hidden fees that some other places happen to have, and that really frustrate people. I know they frustrate me. And you also have peace of mind with Gametime as well. The Gametime guarantee means that you'll always get the best possible price with Gametime, which is hugely valuable. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Gametime right now. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Terms apply. Again, you can create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we'll dive into the game now. And early on, kind of a lot of cross-matching. It's something that Glenn and I talked about at the end of the podcast on Thursday into Friday. It's an interesting matchup in a lot of ways. Now, I should mention this at the top of this. Jalen Johnson started in this game, third time in 6 games. Not a huge coincidence to me because the 3 games that he started at the power forward spot, independent of all of the Hawks fans who want him to start all the time, and I totally get that because his ceiling is very, very evident and very high. But the 3 times he started this year were against the teams that deploy Giannis at the 4, Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4, and Zion at the 4. To me, and Quinn's not saying anything specifically about this, but it's pretty easy to see now that they're playing Jalen with the starters when they have a matchup that dictates that defensively, when they don't want to have Bay guard one of those guys. Now, obviously, Giannis and Towns and Zion at the 4 spot are 3 of the probably 5 or 6 best and most difficult to defend offensive options at that position in the entire league, and they played them in the first 6 games of the season, so that's notable to me. But anyway, we'll come back to it later on, but the Hawks did not play very well with the first with starters early on in this game. The starting lineup all ended up with plus 13 or better in this contest, and Jalen played extremely well in this game. So it obviously worked. No, I don't know whether they'll go back to that lineup again in the future with regard to maybe even Monday against Oklahoma City. But for now, that was a change that we've got a lot of questions about early on in this contest. Anyway, cross matches across the board. Jalen had Zion, Hunter on Ingram. Trae was actually guarding McCollum, and then they had Herb Jones on Trae on the other end of the floor. Not a huge surprise there. Trae was not good in the first half. A couple blown kind of layups in the early going with technical foul free throw. The Hawks did, though, I think, attack the rim pretty effectively in the early going, which certainly was good process and kind of like a good indicator of what was to come. There was a couple of rough turnovers, though, in the first half. Hunter threw a bounce pass that my friend Bob Rathman of Valley Sports Southeast described as being, quote, to nowhere, which I laughed about, but it's 100% true. That led to a dunk by the Pelicans in transition. Defensively, a little bit rough as well in the early going. The Hawks were trailing for the meat of the first half. Not the entire first half, but certainly the most of it. Rotationally, no huge surprises as far as like how the first 8 guys were deployed. But I'll stop here and just note DeAndre Hunter, as I sort of referenced briefly earlier, suffered a right pinky injury with about 7 minutes left in the first quarter. He turned it over in traffic and was immediately holding his hand and basically went straight to the locker room. Like, it looked pretty bad, honestly. They had to get off the bench in a hurry and come into the game. Hunter did come back in about 10 minutes later. The Hawks said officially it is a right pinky finger dislocation. Now, the fact that he came back in is a good sign. No question about that. I do suspect that we will probably see an MRI or some further testing on that. We'll see on that. Again, the fact that he came in is a positive indicator, and Quinn was praising him after the game. I thought he played well despite not a huge offensive game in this one, but circle that in advance of Monday. I don't know if he's going to be available or not, but the fact that he returned is a positive sign. The sort of only change other than the injury to Hunter was that Garrison Matthews actually made his first rotation appearance of the season for the Hawks. He played the 4 minutes after Trae came out of the game. Sorry, when he came back in with Trae when Trae came back for DJ, which is basically the spot that AJ Griffin's been playing in. Now, AJ has been, we chronicled this a lot on the podcast, AJ's not been playing all the time. He's been playing at least 1 stint in every game, sometimes 2, but it's that he's kind of very clearly the 9th man. But in this game, it was Garrison Matthews. Griffin got a DNP-CD, which was a surprise, to be sure. I was not utterly shocked by that. I would have guessed if it was more likely for that to happen with Wes Matthews, but obviously Wes Matthews is not available right now. He's still injured. So, look, I thought Garrison Matthews was pretty much a non-factor. He played 4 minutes, didn't take a shot, had a foul, -6 in his 4 minutes. But it's more about AJ not playing. I know Hawks fans don't love that. I'm kind of with you. Like, I personally would just like to see AJ out there and playing. That isn't to say that Garrison Matthews is not a useful player, because he is one. But I think that if you're trying to, I'm not sure what the thinking there is. Like I've been kind of trying to think about why you might try Garrison, maybe just to see how he's looking. But at the expense of AJ, it's not my favorite thing in the world. So I think that if I had to guess, AJ will be playing again in the near future, but I don't know at this point. And obviously the vibes are good. They've won 4 games in a row. So not as much outrage in my mentions as I probably would have expected with AJ not playing. But I will circle that for sure and come back to it in advance of Monday's game against the Thunder. The Hawks did have one nice run in the first quarter when Jalen had a nice drive and finish. Bay made a 3. Actually, Bogey had a great defensive play on Zion at the rim, which is wild to see. Bogey actually struggled early with his shot and then played much better after that. Bay actually had 10 points on perfect shooting in his first 6 minutes of play. And then actually, I believe he was like 2 of his last 10 from the floor or something like that. He cooled off a lot, but he was very good early on as far as making shots was concerned. Trae had a slow start. Offensively, they had a slow start across the board. Bogey had a big run early in the second quarter, actually. Had the first 8 points of the quarter for the Hawks, hit 2 threes, had a nice steal and a dunk early on. I thought Okongwu played well, especially I've noted this against Valanciunas. I've said this before, but Valanciunas has been a guy who's given Okongwu a lot of fits. And just physical size-wise, Valanciunas is massive. But I thought Okongwu played well against him in particular, had one nice rep in the second quarter that I noticed on a block shot. So a good step forward for him against a tough matchup. The Hawks had a nice run, 11-2 early on in the second to take the lead, actually, briefly for a time. Capella had a couple of nice denials at the rim on Zion. A pretty maddening sequence, actually. It was second quarter. My friend Tyler Jones pointed this out as well. The Hawks had a potential 8-point swing on 2 plays where Zion kind of failed to get back on defense, basically, and the Hawks had 5-on-4s, and both times Murray did not convert on the 5-on-4, and that led to a run-out Zion dunk because Zion, not to his credit, didn't get back on defense. It kind of worked out for them. So it was literally an 8-point swing, and the Hawks were down 7 at the half. So it was like kind of funny to see that kind of being at least part of the difference in the first half of this game. There was a beautiful possession, I thought, that I at least something to note out of a timeout where they set up Jalen to after a pass from Trae on the short roll. So Jalen in the short roll finds Capella for a dunk, and then Capella had a nice block on Zion, and another huge block on Zion a few minutes later. I thought he was great in that sequence. But yeah, they ended up closing with Bay and Johnson together after Hunter got his 3rd foul, but not a whole lot else to add. I said it before, but the Hawks were really rough offensively. Aside from the bogey hot streak in the second quarter, the offense was pretty brutal, actually, before halftime. 5-22 from 3, 9 turnovers. They did rebound the ball well the entire game, but Trae, as I said before briefly, he had been really bad through 5.5 games. In fact, he was 31 of 97 from the field in the first 5.5 games. And yes, as I said many times, field goal percentage is not the way to really evaluate Trae, but there's still a certain break-even point where you got to get to. He's obviously not been that so far this year. He was awesome in the second half, but at least worth noting. And yeah, we'll move on to the second half now. So I said it before, but the Hawks are really, again, I don't want to overuse the word, but they were really dominant after halftime. They really were. They were down by 10 right away, and then they had an 11-2 run, get back within 1. Capella had a couple nice easy buckets. Jalen Johnson had a confident 3, I thought. I think he played very well both ends of the floor. Jalen, under control, crucially. He had a great contest against Zion in the third quarter to force a missed shot. I thought Clint was great the entire second half as well. After Trae and DJ started 0 of 8 from 3, Trae and DJ they were actually both very productive at 3-point range after halftime. So they were 0 of 8 to start, and then they finished 5 of their last 8. So that's very, very helpful when your guards make shots. The Hawks had a 24-6 run in the third quarter to go from down 1 up 17. And that was essentially the biggest swing of the game. 4 threes in that stretch, 2 from Trae, and then 1 from Murray, 1 from Hunter. Trae was awesome in the third, 11.3 assists in 9 minutes. He played a little bit longer than usual. The Hawks scored 31 points in 9 minutes. Made 5 threes. They were cooking. Process-wise, I think I sort of teased this earlier, but Quinn changed some things visibly on film after halftime to counter all the pressure. Trae was getting blitzed a lot in the first half. They started using Jalen a little bit more as a short roll guy. They put their shooters on the floor a little bit further down into the corners to create some more space. They even hit Capella in the corner at one point, which I liked. New Orleans also had to kind of protect Zion, it seemed like. It's actually another Glenn Willis pointed out that Zion had 4 fouls pretty early in the third quarter, and they were trying to hide him. That did not work out very well for them. So combination of some poor defense for sure, but I thought Quinn designed a lot of good schematic changes, and the Hawks just played fantastically on offense, starting then and the entire second half, really. They did have one hiccup late in the third quarter when Jordan Hawkins made back-to-back threes for the Pelicans off the bench. But other than that, it was pretty dominant. Again, they scored 1.7 points per possession in the third quarter. Awesome stuff. In the fourth, Okongwu hit back-to-back threes. Just want to throw that out there. Same spot, actually, on the floor. It was his first and second threes of the season. Number 5, number 6 in his career, actually, for Okongwu. There'll be more of those in the future, though. That was a fun sequence. There was one grab-and-go play by Jalen Johnson. The length of the floor for Oladu Okongwu, that was an sort of awe-inspiring play. And then a huge lob that he caught above the rim to draw a foul. I thought Hunter actually had a great defensive play on Zion, but I know Bally Sports shared over there. Kevin Chouinard shared that clip. He blocked him at the rim, which is no small feat in itself, and then he kept it in bounds and got the possession back for the Hawks. The Pelicans did go small, which was probably smart. But when they did that, the Hawks actually had Capella guarding Herb Jones, which is smart. I mean, it's not like a hugely innovative tactic, but basically put your center on the worst shooter. He sags off to help. He had a great possession where I think he was flying around to force a shot clock violation, and he was great in the second half again. But then, look, down the stretch, the Hawks were actually up 11 with like 5 minutes to go. They were up by double digits the whole fourth quarter, but it wasn't like over. And then there was a huge sequence from Trae and DeJounte. So DeJounte, after a rough start with his mid-ranger in this game, hit a couple of really tough, like 12, 14-footers that were contested, just like, pro star-level shots that he made. And the Pelicans were scoring, but then Trae hit a huge three with about 3.5 minutes to go, an off-ball catch-and-shoot three for good measure. And that put the Hawks were up by 13 points to kind of mostly end the game. And then Trae found Capella for a dagger-ish layup to go up by 15. There was one bad turnover by Trae, like 2 minutes to go. But they really did not do any of the stuff that they did against Washington on Wednesday. So I poked fun at them on Wednesday for not collapsing as they won the game, but they were really rough down the stretch against the Wizards. None of that today. Other than the one bad pick six by Trae, they were really kind of dialed in. They put the game away against a good team and were never really threatened. Again, they were up by double digits the entire second half. No, sorry, entire fourth quarter. Most of the last 16, 17 minutes of this game. So just taking care of business and a very, very impressive performance across the board for this Hawks team. And again, offensively, which is really a juggernaut after halftime. That shows how good this team can be on offense. And that's been the theme for a long time. This is a potentially top 3, top 5 offense in the league. They kind of have to get there to get where they want to go. But right now, this is an offense that is cooking. They've scored 120 points in 4 straight games. I believe, right now, the Hawks are 3rd in the league in offense for the season. 119.3 offensive rating. That is very, very, very impressive. 5 straight games. So Hawks PR had this 120 points and 25 or more assists in 5 straight games. That ties the franchise record. And they've only played 6 games this year. So pretty impressive stuff from this Hawks team offensively and defensively, just enough. All you got to do is do enough. And they have been doing enough in this 4-game winning streak. Okay, we'll have more of the individual player stuff in a second. But first, a word from our sponsors on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And snap into the action this NBA or NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're a new customer, get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Beyond the awesome perks of signing up with FanDuel, they have all the stuff you're looking for across the sports betting space. That includes point spreads and money lines, over-unders, player props, future bets, same-game parlays, live betting, and much more. The FanDuel app is safe and secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes the NFL and college football, NBA, MLB, WNBA, college basketball. They have MMA and boxing and auto racing, soccer, golf, tennis. If you like it, they have it at FanDuel, and they have plenty of options as well around the Hawks. That includes the full scope of stuff in advance of Monday night's game in Oklahoma City, pregame, over-under, point spread, money line, also player props, and then live betting once the game begins. And now's the best possible time to join up at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Check out the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network with an offer that you absolutely do not want to miss. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, we'll dive in now to the player-by-player evaluations. I did say it before, but Garrison Matthews played 4 minutes. Not a whole lot to add on that one that I haven't already said. So move on to the guys who played at least 20 minutes. And all 8 guys who played real minutes in this game played at least 20. Okongwu played the least with 20 minutes, but he was awesome, I thought, in this game. 17 points, 6 rebounds, a steal, a block, 8 free throw attempts. That's a very good sign. 2 threes, 2 of 3 on 2-point shots as well. Only -1, but that was not his fault by any means. I thought it was good to see him play this well against the Pelicans in particular, given their size. And I thought he was brilliant. And look, we'll come back to it in a second with Capella. But my go-to, if you're a recurring listener, you will know this. But if you're a new listener, my apologies for saying this again. The Hawks have 48 good minutes of center play, and that happened again this game. I firmly believe this. I believe that Okongwu, if he's not the best backup center in the league, he's certainly in the top 2. I think he might be the best. And having that guy as your backup center Huge luxury. Capella was great too, but they were very good up front all night long, and that's very, very helpful. Saddiq Bey, again, a red hot start. I think he made his first 4 shots, and he was one of 9 the rest of the way. So he cooled off from the floor. I think Saddiq has been playing fairly well on offense. He didn't have it as a shooter in this game, but 5 rebounds, 2 assists. I recommend a piece that Kevin Chouinard wrote about Saddiq at Hawks.com this week to add some color to the way he's been playing. But I think that Saddiq's been giving them positive minutes. I know I make efforts to not have it be Jalen versus Saddiq, because Jalen is a better, more talented player than Saddiq, a lot higher upside. But that does not mean that Bey is bad. Even as someone who is critical and has been critical of Bey's defense, that's certainly worth pointing out. I think he is still a valuable role player, and that is worth keeping in mind, even if you were trying to advocate on behalf of Jalen Johnson. Bogey had a weird game. So Bogey had 10 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks for Bogey. But I believe he had 10 points in the first 5 minutes of the second quarter, and then he didn't score the rest of the game. 4-14 from the floor, 2 of 10 from 3. I will say he's the kind of guy that can give you offense without making shots. If he's missing shots, he has to be guarded. That's very helpful. But he wasn't great offensively, but he was scrappy defensively in this game. And not a whole lot else to add. But the starters were better. Look, there's been times this year when it's been the bench. In this game, it was the starters for the most part. So Hunter had the quietest stat game, 4 points, 5 rebounds, in 30 minutes, took 3 shots, which I saw someone complain in my mentions actually about him taking only 3 shots. I get that. It's a little bit weird. But if you watch the game, number one, Hunter literally has a finger issue on his shooting hand, which could be some of the problem there. But I thought he contributed well. He played good defense in this game. 5 rebounds is pretty solid for him. He did his job on Ingram all night long, holding to 16 points. I thought that especially gutting through that, well, I'm sure it wasn't painful. He looked to be very much pain when he hurt his finger. I thought he played solidly despite 4 points. It's okay. It's possible to do that. And I think Hunter has been giving them a lot this year, and certainly more as a scorer than he has been in the past. But in this game, he gets the pass from me on offense, and he contributed very well. Capella, 28 minutes, 17 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks. I think he had at least 3 blocks. He might have had 4 blocks. I'm not sure where the credit was right down there, but in my notes, I think I had for 4 blocks. Anyway, plus 19. He was 8 of 9 from the floor. I know Hawks fans love that. 8 of 9 from the floor from Clint. I thought Clint's second half was genuinely awesome. It wasn't the most gaudy numbers, but he was great defensively after halftime. And another reminder that he's pretty good. That's my operating position. But certainly, I think even the Capella skeptics were jumping on board in the second half. Hey, he played awesome, and he did. He was very, very, very good after halftime. A lot of guys were, but I thought that is his was more subtle if you're not paying attention to defense a whole lot. And the other 3 guys were all just tremendous as far as numbers were concerned. So Jalen Johnson played a career high 36 minutes in this game and earned all of them. Also tied his career best with 21 points, tied his career best with 11 rebounds, had 4 assists, played good defense, 6 of 10 on 2s, 2 of 3 on 3s, got to the line 4 times. Good defensively, I thought. Jalen just played really awesome in this game. And look, that's not a new phenomenon. He's been really good at times all year long, but he might have had his shakiest game in the last game they played. I thought he was not awesome against the Wizards by any means, other than the rebounding, but I think he might have had his best game tonight. So, obviously, I said this on Twitter tonight. I hope folks got their most improved player bets in at FanDuel before the wire came down. And if he's still available on that, I would look it up right now, even probably. But I think he's playing well. No question about that. Starting, not starting, whatever. 36 minutes is a lot of minutes, and he earned all of them, played great. And then Trae and DeJounte. So early on, they struggled, but both guys settled in very nicely. DeJounte was not efficient in this game. 20 points on 21 shooting possessions for DeJounte. He didn't have his jump shot going, but he did make 2 actually big mid-rangers in the fourth quarter. Also had 7 assists and 8 rebounds. Played good defense, I thought, at the point of attack for the most part in this one. And then Trae finally got it going after halftime. So ends up with 22 points, 12 assists, 5 rebounds. He was 4 of 8 on 2s, 3 of 7 on 3s, 5 of 6 from the floor. I believe he was 5 of 7 after halftime from the field, plus the free throws. And his most efficient game so far this year, I think, offensively, plus the passing. And then defensively, I think he's been pretty good. Not pretty good for everyone, but especially for Trae, he's not been an active negative defensively in most of these games. It's been good to see him kind of buy in. He's definitely playing hard. And aside from a slow start, 39 minutes is a lot of minutes for him, but I think he played well in this game, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come, because he's been a slow starter in his career as far as making shots. But as the shots fall, Trae is a sort of a dynamic force, obviously, on offense, and he's the key to all of what they do. And look, in the fourth quarter, Trae and DeJounte were huge, and that's what you need from your guys who need to close games out. Like they are the two leaders offensively, and they play like it down the stretch in this game. So last thought on this one, just an awesome performance. I mean, again, the first half was meh, down 7, down 10 at one point, but second half was like all systems go. Pretty much an A performance after halftime. They were that good, especially on the road, given the context, given this opponent that was rested, all that stuff. Just an awesome half of basketball from Atlanta. And from here, Monday's game is the next one on the agenda in Oklahoma City. And then from there, they go to Mexico City. So it's a 3-game road trip, and it's a weird one. New Orleans, OKC, Mexico City. So my condolences to Lauren Williams of the AJC, who has to make all these flights commercially. The team just flies city to city. Lauren's got to fly to like crazy locations to get there. But a weird trip, but certainly an interesting one. The Thunder are 3-3, and they're good. They did lose the last 2 games in narrow fashion to New Orleans and Golden State, but they're going to be rested. They have 2 days off. Also, their 5th straight home game on Monday. That's a little weird, but so they'll be well rested. But very interesting matchup. They play 5 out on offense. They play really a kind of attacking style. They have Chet now to give them rim protection and shooting at the 5 spot. There's some question about Shea, who was All-NBA last year, is an awesome player. He did not play, actually, in their last game. I think it was a knee issue of some kind. So we'll see if he is available. But and obviously, if he doesn't play, that would be taking some of the luster off that. But Trae's always up for this. Trae going back home to Oklahoma City. That's a big storyline every year when he goes back there. But the Thunder are pretty good. So that's a nice test for the Hawks on Monday. And then they have a weird trip to Mexico City to play Orlando on Thursday in a primetime NBA TV standalone spot. So we'll talk about that more later on in the week. But that's the next game on the agenda is Monday evening in Oklahoma City. We'll have full coverage of that game as we always do on the podcast. And I always encourage you to subscribe to this show. So if you're a first-time listener that just found us tonight, first of all, thank you for listening. But please subscribe to the podcast on your audio platform of choice, whether it be Apple or Spotify, or Google, Overcast, etc. Also, we are on YouTube on the video side, so likes and subscriptions there, very much appreciated. Please tell your friends about the podcast. If you have a Hawks fan friend in your life that has not found the show, share it with them. That would be huge for me, so I really, really appreciate that. 5-star ratings and reviews also encouraged. I say this the last couple of shows. I promise I won't keep saying it every single podcast, but there's always also going to be some bonus audio content in the Locked On Hawks audio-only feed. So your Apples, Spotify, etc. Not on YouTube, but all the audio platforms. The Locked On Sports Atlanta crew has been doing postcast episodes. So they're kind of just bonus content. That does not involve me, but it's going to be extra in your podcast feed. So don't panic. Listen to that show if you'd like to. I'm not involved, but it's from the network and it's Atlanta focused. So there you go. And just be aware of that. And all that said, please follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there if you'd like to as well at BT Rowland. I also write about the Hawks, patreon.com/BT Rowland. And one more time, I really appreciate everybody listening to the show tonight. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and a heck of a performance from the Hawks going into your Sunday. And stay tuned. We'll see you all next time.